You know the vibe, I know the vibe, we know the vibe is Azzy Vibes in the cut. And today we about to be reacting to I Bet You Didn't Know That number 4. Without further ado, bro, this nigga.
Yo, Azzy.
Yeah.
Talking through breeze, nigga. Nigga look like fucking Polo G. But yo,
Yeah, he was a
I need you to tell
dickhead.
me if you jacking this right here, my boy.
Alright.
When it comes to me and people, I'm always in the wrong. I express myself in songs, that's why I came back to back with 2 separate tracks. I'm always the problem in every situation. I need to fly out and take a vacation. All this anger is built up, stress like Johnny. I'm someone that you shouldn't test. I know I'm not perfect, no one's the best. I've been for so long, I'm not the same as the rest. Fuck it, I'ma be hardest.
As you seen in the last clip, bro, this is days later. I just kept on procrastinating. Plus, I got busy, and that day I was on the phone till like 6 in the morning. But they ended up changing the title to "This Tree Smells Too Much," and that's what they do to it. Without hesitation, we're gonna get right into it.
You'll find out why. Today, you'll find out why people put IV drips on the most expensive tree in the world, how a revolver helped our ancestors fight pests, what's worse, the most ordinary ant or a demon wolf straight from hell, when pigeons started working for intelligence, and why an 8-year-old boy was considered a monster in his village. Look at these x-rays. You can see the bones moving away from each other and getting bigger. They're much larger than usual. The number of soft tissues is also growing. These hands seem huge and assume a weird shape. This is what happens to people suffering from macrodactyly, a congenital disease in which a baby is born with abnormally large fingers or toes due to an overgrowth of bones and soft tissues. Mohammed Kaleem also suffers from this disorder. By the time he was 8, the boy's hands already measured 13 inches from wrist to fingertips. His hands were even called the biggest in the world. But this is hardly the title you'd strive to get. Kaleem's hands are getting bigger every year, and this stops him from doing the simplest everyday things. Living with such hands is really hard. When each weighs 18 pounds, even eating becomes a challenge. But this is not the only problem. Kaleem's family lives in one of the poorest areas of India, and the locals are, to put it mildly, wary of him. The kids are afraid of the boy and call him the devil. Because of this, Kaleem was even denied admission to the school. Even his own uncle believes that the disease is caused by
slap boxing
demons.
tournament.
So Kaleem has to deal with fear and superstitions. Fortunately, Kaleem got help from the doctors and underwent a series of complex surgeries to eliminate the consequences of the disease. This is, in fact, the only way to do something about macrodactyly. It's still not clear what causes the disorder. Researchers believe it's not inherited, but may be associated with fetal developmental disorders. Well, now let's move on to more straightforward things, like mousetraps. You all know what they look like, but few people know that it took humanity some time until they came up with a usual design. In 1882, mice and rats were literally shot. Not by people, of course. The mousetrap with a revolver was placed near the burrow, and when the animal stepped onto the treadle, the mechanism pulled the trigger. On the one hand, it sounds like utter nonsense. On the other hand, it probably worked. Sometimes. Also, the owners of this mousetrap heard exactly when it needed to be reset. Another mousetrap was actually reusable. Unlike the devices designed to capture and kill a single rodent, this one could trap multiple pests. The mousetrap consisted of 3 chambers. The bait was placed in the first to lure the rodent, and when it stepped on the small seesaw-like mechanism inside, the door slammed shut. After that, the rodent had only one way, up the wire mesh shaft. The shaft ends with a door that opens in one direction. Through it, the animal finds itself in the 3rd chamber, from where it can no longer get out. But as it gets there, it opens the door of the trap for the next victim.
Oh, that's smart.
If you overdraw your account, Wells Fargo gives you an extra day grace period to avoid the overdraft fee.
But these are all stories from the past. Throughout the history of mankind, people came up with many weird things. However, there are even more exciting inventions today. For example, underwater farms that grow strawberries and lettuce. About 328 feet off the northwest coast of Italy, there is a cluster of strange structures at the seabed. This is Nemo's Garden, a project
Bro.
of the Ocean Reef Group, which started in 2012.
Them
What's
strawberries
still
baby
going
tasting
on?
like
Essentially, these are
the best of the
greenhouses that
best.
use all the benefits of the underwater environment. The temperature here is stable, and unlike on land, there are no extreme conditions that would harm underwater plants. And then I thought that the plants in the water aren't getting enough light, probably. After all, they usually need a lot of sun, and turns out they get quite a lot of it. Studies have shown that the physiological development of most plants depends on the red spectrum of light. Red color can be filtered out at a depth of 16 to 49 feet. So the plant pods are submerged 16 to 26 feet below the surface. And it works. Today there are 9 biospheres in action at Nemo's Garden and more than 600 crops growing. People are harvesting crops and planting new species. In short, it's like typical farming.
people
Only
are
under
really
the water.
smart. Cause who would just think of to do
Meanwhile,
that?
in Bangladesh, they decided not to dive so deep and set up floating gardens. Strictly speaking, they appeared here hundreds of years ago. The gardens are made from native plants that float in rivers, traditionally water hyacinths, and work almost like rafts, rising and falling with the waters. It's on these living rafts that farmers grow vegetable plants. Usually it's okra, some gourds, spinach, and eggplant. Sometimes they also include spices like turmeric and ginger. In the rainy season, such gardens are the only hope. So if one day we witness the end of the world and the planet ends up underwater, we already know how to deal with it. Of course, any garden or farm will need a scarecrow to get rid of birds, and the most advanced scarecrow so far is a robotic peregrine falcon. But it's unlikely that it'll be put out on garden protection duty because the robot has a completely different mission. It protects planes from colliding with birds. It happens all the time and costs the aviation industry over $1 billion each year.
How does that
Damaged
help?
planes, delays, and cancellations of flight around the world. That's quite a few problems. To protect airports and save money, they made an artificial bird of prey. The robot was made from fiberglass and polypropylene, reinforced with carbon fiber, and equipped with cameras so that it could transmit live pictures of its flight to the operators. Field testing in the Netherlands showed that within just 5 minutes of launching the Falcon, all the birds were flying away in fear. Moreover, the fake peregrine falcon turned out to be so realistic that the birds were still afraid of it even 3 months later. And this is very important. Any animal eventually ceases to feel fear if it understands that the scarecrow's not dangerous. Seems like no animal can believe a predatory robot could be actually quite harmless. But if the Dutch birds are so easily scared, they better hope they never meet the Japanese super monster wolf. You only have to
What the
look at it
hell?
once to understand. The name is well-deserved. Sized 20 by 20 inches, it has realistic fur, huge fangs, and flashing red eyes. If you see it at night, you'll be scared too. Although this robot was designed to keep away the wild boars, which were attracted by rice and chestnut crops. It's not supposed to cause a heart attack in humans. As soon as the robot detects movement nearby, it starts to howl, as if it wasn't scary enough already. The robot wolf uses solar-powered batteries
every
and
time I
makes
see that,
different
I'll
kinds
probably
of
shit
sounds
myself.
so that the animals can't get used to it. And you know, I don't think this robot is effective against boars only. I think that any living being would want to stay as far away from it as possible.
Said 20 by
Good thing
20.
this wolf can't run. Imagine if it was controlled by operators like a peregrine falcon drone. Oh, I just remembered. I want to tell you about the first drones with cameras in the history of mankind. They were pigeons. I mean, actual live birds that carried little cameras with a timer so the pigeons could take photos in the air. By the way, this technology was even patented in 1907 by the German pharmacist Julius Neubronner. Some of the first photos of the Earth from above were taken with the help of pigeons. It's not a novelty anymore. Today you can simply
supposed to get
find
the pigeon
satellite
down? You
photos on
supposed
the
to shoot it?
internet. But when the first pigeons with cameras took off, that was a breakthrough.
Unless you train the pigeon.
Neubronner took his birds about 60 miles away and then released them. On the way home, the birds took pictures, although unintentionally. To increase the mobility of his living drones, Neubronner even built a horse-drawn dovecote and added a darkroom to it. This way, he had more chances to get a photo of any particular object. Later, this technology was adopted by the military. During World War I, specially trained pigeons were fitted with tiny cameras and sent flying over enemy territory. While the birds were in the air, the cameras were taking pictures. Well, almost like modern drones.
How do you train a bird?
Now, how about
not
football?
a bird, but like a
You
pigeon.
may love it or hate it or
I know you can
even
trade
don't
like
care
parrots
about it,
and
but this type of football
falcons.
will definitely get your attention. A group of Austrian football players have invented a new extreme sport, which has already been called the toughest kind of football. Just let that sink in. Extreme alpine football. The players said they came up with the idea when they watched the 2014 World Cup and realized that was very boring and too easy. And they decided to play the game on the slope. That's where you really need a lot of strength, endurance, skill, and patience. I wonder how often the ball rolls off the hill and ends up somewhere in the forest. And since I mentioned the forest, it's just impossible not to talk about such a thing as IV drips for the trees. What, you never heard of them? No wonder, since we also found out about them just a couple of days ago. Kinum is an extremely rare species of agarwood used in the perfume and incense industries for its complex and very strong aroma. Interestingly enough, its heartwood is almost odorless, but it can be forced to produce resin, and that's where IV drips come in handy. Usually, precious resin appears as a response to stress caused by a certain type of mold. Not so long ago, people learned to infect trees artificially to get more resin, and now there's a resin production business throughout Asia, from Indonesia to Myanmar and Vietnam. By the way, remember the time when everyone around wore masks? When the pandemic just broke out, creative people began to invent the strangest ways to protect themselves from
no
the
way
virus.
you got a fucking
One such
McDonald's
example
bag.
is a portable oasis. Elaine Verschuren, a Belgian artist and social worker, has created a mini plexiglass greenhouse that rests on his shoulders and purifies the air with the plants inside. The artist, suffering from asthma, found it much more convenient to breathe thyme, rosemary, and lavender than wear an ordinary mask. Actually, if you choose the right plants and grow, for example, tomatoes, you can grab a bite on the move. Although it'll probably not be very convenient to grab vegetables with your mouth without using your hands, and it'd look rather weird.
Nah, I got allergies and asthma too, but if I got allergies, so if I was to wear that shit, motherfucker, either way, if I go without it or with it, I'm gonna be in that motherfucker dying for gasping for air.
However, snow leopards bite their own tails, and this doesn't bother anyone. The internet is full of these photos, and everyone finds them cute. Snow leopards are predators, but they act like domestic cats. However, these predators put their tails into their mouths not only when they're playing. Sometimes snow leopards curl up into a ball and hold their tail with their teeth. One of the reasons they do this is the cold weather. It's really very cold in the mountains. And although snow leopards grow a warm fur coat for the winter, it doesn't always help. Yes, their bodies are well insulated, but the tail and mouth can freeze. And what about the times when snow leopards hold their tails between their teeth while walking? Well, the cold has nothing to do with it. This part of the body is really heavy, and holding it up all the time is tiring, so they use their teeth to make things a bit easier. The script says I need to think of a logical transition to a huge keyboard, but I have no idea how to move from snow leopards to keyboards, so here's a fact. Google has released a new keyboard with a unique design. Instead of grouping keys into rows as we're used to, this keyboard cleverly arranges all the keys in a row from left to right.
Bro, whoa.
I don't know who came up with this idea
Whoa.
and who thought it would be convenient to type like this. The result was a stick 5.4 feet long,
Bro,
and the
return that,
developers
bro.
claim it's much easier to find the right keys this way. Well,
Ow.
I don't know. Personally, I don't look
5
at the keyboard
feet?
at all when I'm typing. But don't you think we could mention more animals in this video? Especially the creepy ones? Well, it's time to look at the ant's head.
Fathead, yeah.
Yep, turns out that even such hard-working and often harmless creatures like ants can look like monsters from the darkest dungeons of hell. This photo was one of the 57 images of distinction in the Nikon's Small World Photomicrography competition.
God, they're ugly.
It was captured by Lithuanian photographer Eugenijus Kavaliauskas, who used reflected light technology to take a photo of this angry monster. But if you think about it and take a closer look, turns out everything's not so scary. Part of the problem might be that the ant's antenna
that shit
look
look
like
like a
eyes in the
face.
place where they join the head. It's really scary. They seem to be bloodshot. Together with teeth, This makes the ant look like a real monster from the world of insects. The actual eyes are further back on the head, and they look much cuter. Well, the ant looks
That
far
does not
less
look
creepy
cute.
if you look at its whole head.
This shit is
By the
ugly.
way, this
Stop
photographer
hyping
didn't
it up.
receive the top prize in the competition. Most likely the judges were simply too scared to look at his photo carefully. See you later.
No. Nigga was hyping it up. That ant was ugly either way. But if this video is probably gonna get posted after the one that I already edited. But I already got the Xbox set up. I already put my what you call it? Customized it. Let's just say that. I already customized it. I put this one blue since the other one's red. But it's working out pretty fun. Next up, we coming in with the PC so I can play more games. I'm trying to play more scary games. I got a couple downloading right now. I got a couple of solo games I want to get out to. Check out the channel AzzyCxld. Everything will be in the description. But this is the end of the video. Like, comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, share the video. Tell me what you want me to react to next or what you want to see next in the comments or on my Twitter. That'll also be in the description. And am I missing anything? No, not that I know of. But